Welcome back to the bed build. So I've had to take a few days off this project, but getting back to it now today. Last time I started assembling the pedestal, or what you might call the base, and I also took one of the trim pieces. I should call this cladding. If you'll recall, the base will be clad in the same oak plywood just for decorative purposes. But I also put some of those little trim scraps on the end of this plywood and glue and clamped and let to dry. So it's been drying for a few days, so it'll be all ready to go. Alright, take the clamps off of this thing. These pipe clamps are great. They have really good pressure holding power. They're a bit crude. They don't have a very big jaw, so you can't clamp a deep project. You can clamp a long ways. These I actually have set up so that you can thread more pipes on the end and make them, you know, infinitely adjustable as far as length goes. I imagine there is some kind of working limit on what this pipe will stand as far as bowing goes. But regardless, that's the big giant pipe clamp. Useful. I don't use them real often, but use them when nothing else will do. So this is the little trim that I glued on there. And you'll notice that it overlaps all sides, which is by design. This one is even worse. I just cut one in two and then glued that on there. You can size that a few ways. If it were just the end, I would probably flush cut that. But the side you're going to have to use, you could use a hand plane, or like I was saying the other day, the electric version of a hand plane is a router. And there's even a couple options for the router. You can put your router on the top here and set your bit depth just perfectly and route along there. I've done that, it works well. You can use what's called a flush cut bit. Set your router on the end and route along the side. That has a bearing that runs on here. After considering my options, I've decided to go with this method. And this is my small, they call it a palm router. It's a Bosch Colt router. And so I have a straight bit mounted here. The depth of the bit is set to be exactly the same as this material, very slightly less. I don't want to route into the plywood part. I want to route away the oak part. So if I leave a little bit too much here, that's fine. I can hit that with a sander and take care of that in short order. So this is a handy little router. It's kind of my go-to router for almost everything. It's very easy to handle, easy to make stable. It's not big and heavy like the other one. It's just not very powerful. Well, it's pretty powerful. I don't have power problems with it. The biggest downside with this router is it does not accept a 1/2 inch shank bit. So if I'm trying to route with something that uses a 1/2 inch shank bit, like I was doing the trim on this, I would have used this router had that trim bit fit in a 1/4 inch shank router, but it didn't, so I had to use the big Porter cable. So we'll give this a shot. So my best effort to set up the router properly, I didn't do it. I cut into the oak. Now I do have another chance because one side of this is the back. So I guess I've determined what the back is by my mistake. So we'll back this bit up a little bit and then we'll turn that over and do the other side. On my second attempt, I had the bit depth set perfectly, but I wavered a little bit at the end, so I scalped the plywood. And that was because the piece I had here was narrow. And so I've replaced that with a larger piece. Problem is, I had to reset the depth because it's thicker. So I've reset that. I believe it's fine. I'm going to go ahead and turn to the front side and try that again. To me, that's perfect. There's a very slight catch there, just enough to hit that with a sander, and it'll be perfect. Now I'm able to sand that aggressively to make it flat under there because that's the back. I'm not real concerned with, you know, sanding away the stain or anything. But I need it to fit nicely. So this situation, I shouldn't have gotten myself into this. You always want to cut your piece, you know, a lot bigger, not just a little bigger, because this is too small to trim with my flush cut saw, but it's pretty aggressive for a sanding block, so I don't have much choice. Alright, that's good. I can install that now. You know, I'll admit to you, I guessed at a dimension here. I didn't really know how thick these little cladding pieces were, so I guessed. And so what I had to do was I had to cut this piece short by the thickness of two of these cladding pieces. So it isn't until now that I can see how close my guess was. And my guess was really, really close. I'm very happy about that. There's only one more thing to install, and that's 12 of these little trim pieces. I have to cut those very, very accurately, although getting this tight to the bottom piece where that matches up is more critical in getting it tight to the top, because the top is not going to be as visible as the bottom. You're going to be looking at it from this way, so you won't see a little tiny gap there, but we're going to get as close as we can regardless. And for making very accurate marks, I use a marking knife, and that just makes a nice cut line in the wood. You can line it. This side is flat, this side is beveled, so you can mark right along the side of something like that. Be very, very accurate that way. My challenge is I have to fit this between in order to mark it. You can't measure this stuff, that's not accurate enough. So I'll push it up against that as straight as I can. Mark it with my marking knife. It's difficult. Okay. So I don't know if you can see that mark right there. That's what I need to cut to. I'd like to use my table saw for this, but as you can see, the table saw is a bit busy. So I'll try to do this on the miter saw. I'll see how accurate I can be with that. I've intentionally cut that slightly long, just about the width of that knife long. And it actually goes in there. It goes in there, and it's not, I don't want it to be causing pressure on the trim. So but I think that's good. So every one of these is going to have to be cut custom. I run my sanding block over that just to knock this corner off a little, and that'll go in the back, because that corner will often cause you trouble getting that to sit nice and flush in there. And I can feel that there's actually some glue in there, so I need to get that out with the chisel. Have you ever used tape to clamp a project? Well, I'm going to do it here. This piece of trim doesn't need a lot of pressure on it. So I'm going to tape it. Liberal amount of glue on the plywood, because it soaks up glue fast. Just a little glue on the oak. Oak glues together really well. Very nice that way. Okay. So this is my trim piece. I'll put some tape on it. Install it. And that holds in there really nice. I can pull that with the tape. And I'll put another piece. I've more or less flushed that at the front. And that doesn't matter. This is the head. This is a part you're never going to see. And there's a bit more of a reveal on the inside. It's nice. It reveals, they make a little shadow line. It'd be nice to get a clamp on there, but it's not going to happen. You cut small pieces like that on the miter saw, they're going to go flying. There we go. That's perfect. Wow. Make sure it's clean in there. Just take the corner off. This is the one that had the flaw here. And that's not going to cause me an issue. I just didn't want that to be on the front. So we'll install that this way. Just like that. Okay. Slight reveal on each side of this one. Good pressure, stick the tape down. Nice. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing with this knife. I'm registering on the end of this trim here, and then cutting along just to make a mark on that little trim piece. I'm trying not to cut my fingers at the same time. So I don't need much of a mark. And that's enough. I can see that. Bolster that a little bit. Cut that. It's nice to have a sharp blade in that miter saw. Look at that. It's so close that if I angle it, it won't go in. Put it in straight, it goes in perfectly. I would say that is perfect. Now these need to be almost flush with this side. I want just a nail catch on that, because I want these two trim pieces to come together nice and tight. That's going to be a visual. It'll be an oddity anyway, because there's two trim pieces side by side. They're not going to match. There's not one like everything else. So I don't want too much of a draw to the eye. So they need to be tight. But they're never going to be fastened directly. I'll fasten the two cabinets together and that's it. You know what? I felt some glue there. Maybe not. Okay, that should be just right. Bet you didn't know you could use tape for wood clamps, eh? Yes, you can. I'm getting good at this. I haven't cut one twice yet. It's always difficult for me. I pick up some oak to install on one side. Is going to be glued and never seen again. But the both sides have some really nice figure, and I hate to cover it up. But oh well. That piece is just, it's not as tight as the others. It's not quite straight either. This is one of these places where it moves around. That little nail trick might be good, except I don't have much clamping pressure with just tape. My wife laughs at me when I say one more and I'm half done. That's okay. I say that kind of thing a lot. Okay, this is a visual point too, and I think I want that flush. And again, I can make it just a nail catch proud and sand it. That's the foot of the bed. If you're going to see anything, you're going to see that. I made a mess there too, didn't I? I should be using my little brush. My finger's too big for this. I don't think I pre-fit that, did I? I assumed that I cut it right. Cocky. Now, I'm always a little wary of tape. You get gum on stuff, so I don't want to leave that on there too long. But rinse and repeat the other side.